Today, I wanted to talk about a topic that has come up again quite a bit lately in my news feeds, my social media, and even just in the media. I'm seeing a common trend of people referring to people they know as psychopaths or sociopaths. And while I understand kind of the tendency towards this and what people are trying to say, I want to specify that psychopathy and sociopathy in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health, we actually define psychopathy and sociopathy usually falling under antisocial personality disorder. So the diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder is kind of an ongoing pattern where a person has very little regard for the rights of other people. And quite often, these people will have been diagnosed as children with conduct disorders. We do not diagnose antisocial personality disorder in anyone under 18. They can have traits, but we do not usually diagnose. Why do I want to clarify this? Because this is a really severe label that we're putting on people. And actually, when we look at the general population, the incidence of psychopathy, sociopathy are actually only around 3% in our general population. It's a lot higher in certain populations, so like prison populations, but generally speaking, the people that we're surrounded by or the people that are in our communities, there would only be a 3% incidence, which is still high considering what this diagnosis encompasses, but I just want to clarify that piece. I also see a lot of comparisons between psychopathy, sociopathy, and narcissism. And while there are some similarities, narcissists function in a slightly different way. They're very much more about talking about themselves and sometimes a little bit less aware of some of their behaviors, where someone who is a psychopath or a sociopath would really directly know what they're doing and they have quite calculated ways of going about their behavior. So without further ado, here are the 7 criteria listed in the DSM for antisocial personality disorder. So number 1 is a failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behaviors as indicated by repeatedly performing acts that are grounds for arrest. So these people often do not respect the law, hence why there is such a high incidence of psychopathy, sociopathy, and antisocial personality disorder in the prison population. Number 2, deceitfulness, as indicated by repeated lying, use of aliases, or conning others for personal profit or pleasure. So these people are not usually honest. They make up quite elaborate lies. They may even get into relationships with people who they intend to con or lie to, and they usually have some kind of gain from this lying, whether it be monetary, social, sexual. There's usually some kind of benefit to the person with antisocial personality disorder of their deceitful behavior. Number 3 is impulsivity or failure to plan ahead. This might seem like somewhat of a contrast to this calculated behavior that they sometimes have when it comes to other people and conning them, but this just refers to kind of life plans. They don't really necessarily consider others or consider the consequences of their actions. Number 4, irritability and aggressiveness, as indicated by repeated physical fights or assaults. So people with this personality disorder quite often will have assault charges, or they will have a history of fighting or violence. And this will go right back to childhood quite often, with these conduct disorders being put on them as a label as well. Number 5, reckless disregard for safety or the safety of others, so they're not considerate about safety precautions or taking care of well-being of themselves or other people. Number 6, consistent irresponsibility, as indicated by repeated failure to sustain consistent work behavior or honor financial obligations. So one example of this is people who are psychopaths or sociopaths or fall under this antisocial personality disorder diagnosis quite often do not work well in a structured environment. They don't like figures of authority. They don't like being accountable to other people. You will quite often find them, if they are in a workplace, they'll be managing, or they will start their own companies and be kind of more entrepreneurial in that way because of their intense dislike of authority figures. Number 7 is that they have a lack of remorse, so they don't feel bad about hurting, mistreating, or stealing from other people. Some psychopaths and sociopaths have a history of like harming animals or people, and they don't feel any kind of empathy for doing that. Another thing that I notice with people I've worked with who fall under this criteria or under this diagnosis is that they are good at having conversations and having kind of a falsified sense of empathy or rationalizing the things that they do. So being aware that they are quite good at manipulating conversations and finding out information about other people. So they can really be chameleons in social settings and kind of fall under whatever identity the person they're talking to has. They will want to know about interests and kind of chameleonize themselves to fit in social situations. So that's just a little tidbit to know, but an important one if you are dealing with someone, especially in a relationship, in friendships, at work, who falls under this diagnosis. Now, the other thing to remember is if someone falls under a diagnosis of bipolar or schizophrenia and they're having antisocial episodes that kind of meet these criteria, they are not necessarily classed as having an antisocial personality disorder because the behaviors may fall under these other labels or mental illnesses. So therapy options for someone who is dealing with psychopathy or sociopathy or this antisocial personality trait, whatever we want to call it, would have to acknowledge and notice their own behavior and their own identity and have some desire to change it, I believe, in order to benefit from therapy. I don't believe that we should exclude these individuals from a therapeutic process, but there needs to be some willingness to change or desire to change these traits within that person and from their perspective. If you are working with someone who has traditional antisocial personality disorder, there may not be that desire or that understanding that they are lacking empathy, or they may not actually really care that they lack empathy. These people will quite often fall under, like I say, the criminal justice system. They are quite often abusive in relationships. Not always, but they can be. And there is some argument around that to say that they don't really feel love towards other people. They more see people as a possession or something for them to own. If you're dealing with someone like this, it won't be the same as dealing with someone else in a relationship. So that's why I really emphasize that being safe, reaching out, getting support and help on how to deal with the antisocial personality disordered person in your life. Thanks so much for watching this video, you guys. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you need support with your mental health and well-being, don't forget to check out my free therapy resources below for more information and amazing weekly tips.